Well, Michelle, thank you very much. And folks, thanks for coming today. I really appreciate it. I want to recognize some folks here. You're all special, but then there are people who are...
Watch out.
Yeah, right. Anyway, I'll just get to it. David Wilton is here, our MLA for the area. So David, nice to see you. Quebec Post is here, and I really appreciate acknowledge their presence. The Waterford community paper is here, and the Coast radio station is here. Kim DeVoe is here, and Ms. Coombs, who's running in this area, is here as well. So anyway, to everybody, welcome. The problem is, who did I miss? I'm sure I missed somebody.
Your wife Marie.
You're my wife. Which is actually quite something. She's here, because if you had known our host this morning, my goodness, it was pretty exciting. Around 10 o'clock or so, we were charging out the door from Boysdale. I need to begin by telling you, in a lot of ways, to be here in the Waterford and to be running for mayor is to be standing on holy ground for me. When I came back to Sydney many years ago and got involved in New Dawn, I had the pleasure of coming to know Dr. Dan Nathanson. By that time, Nathanson had finished up as mayor. And I got to tell you, I mean, one of the things that I cherish is that he agreed to come on the New Dawn board, and in those early days, and so I sat at the table with that man. For me, Dr. Nathanson was this iconic leadership figure. And this was never meant to diminish any other mayor in the area. But I always remember something Father John Capstick had said. John Capstick was with the Extension Department, passed on as well. And I remember he said one time that within Kinbretton, we'd only ever had one mayor, and that was Dan Nathanson. And that wasn't meant to diminish anybody, but it was to speak to his leadership and his vision and his wisdom. So to be standing here, running for mayor of CBRM, standing on the ground where Dan Nathanson served, is an incredible honor for me. Incredible honor. The other thing I want to say is I'm quite delighted to be here in the Carmel Center. This center has a lot of cachet. I was the first time when Sister Margie was thinking about this. I had a visit from her and from Maureen Yurchison, and I remember. And again, this is not to talk about me; it's to talk about them. But I remember having this delightful conversation. They were thinking about this concept proceeding, and I thought it was a wonderful idea. And Margie, over the years, would always give me too much credit that I had helped to inspire, which really wasn't the case at all. But I must say, I mean, they really struggled with this. They really struggled with this in terms of trying to find a pathway to revitalization. And I always thought at some point, Margie, her affection for whatever small role I had played was going to turn, because as the struggle continued, at some point she was going to say, well, that wasn't a very good idea. But anyway, she never did. But I must say, I mean, I'm not close to this, and I don't believe in rumors, but there are rumors that progress is being made, and I am delighted with those rumors. This is an important project. I think what they're doing here, and my understanding of the concept in terms of moving forward, is incredibly exciting. So it is delightful to be in this building. one of the delightful things about an election, one of the delightful things about running for mayor is it creates this opportunity to distinguish what the different candidates believe. So for me, this election is an opportunity to be clear about, if I'm elected, what it means, what that means in terms of the direction I want to move in. A couple of days ago, the mayor incumbent talked about infrastructure, and we were jokingly saying, well, I could do that same thing. I could, because that money is coming, that money's been approved, it's driven by the federal contribution to the infrastructure program across the country, and that's wonderful, that's delightful, that's $16 million. That it's going to be new money driven by the 50-cent dollars that are coming into the federal government. So 50% by the feds, 25% coming from the province, and 25% from the municipality. So that is glorious. But that doesn't distinguish us, because this is your money, and no matter who's the mayor, it will be spent. But I do want to take a moment today to talk about infrastructure and to talk about what my approach would be. To put this in context, there's three things I think are important to consider when you're talking about infrastructure. First of all, there's the whole business of the financial debt and the infrastructure debt. Those two things you've got to balance. The municipality cannot go to a deficit, but it does carry debt from previous capital expenditures it made. So it's important, but there's two sides to this. There's financial debt and there's infrastructure debt. To my knowledge, we don't have a clear sense of what our infrastructure debt is, what needs to be done that we haven't been able to do. But our general understanding across the country is that's a big number. That is a big number. Secondly, the second issue of importance is how do we decide as a community what we're going to spend infrastructure money on? That's an important issue. That's an important question. And thirdly, we are a large community geographically, and we're not all that many people, but we're a large geography, and we are comprised of a lot of different communities. Each community has priorities, each community has aspirations, and we, as a municipality, we need to move forward in a way that's balanced. That's the way we need to do it. In terms of what's happening now, there's a fair bit of talk about the financial debt and reducing it, which is a grand thing. Of course that's important. Back in 2014, the chief financial officer at the municipality noted, when she talked about how the debt had been reduced, she also noted that as the financial debt was being reduced, what that meant in part is that we weren't speaking in a robust way to the other infrastructure, roads, sidewalk, that kind of thing. So I think it's incredibly important when we're addressing this issue to understand these two pieces. And right now, the only thing we're addressing is the issue of reducing the financial debt, which is important, which is fundamental. That process was started in 2010, that process of bringing that debt down, and that's important. We have to be mindful of that, but we can't neglect the other side of the ledger. In terms of the issue of how are decisions being made, what projects are we picking? How are we deciding what we're going to spend the money on? Okay? I'm anxious about that in terms of the present procedure. I'm not clear how we're deciding that. What I certainly believe it needs to be decided in a way that's rational, in a way wherein we step back, we look at what's it going to cost, what's the benefit. Okay? And of course, thirdly, when I look at what's happening in terms of how we're balancing what I call the geographic interest, I'm anxious about that as well. If you look at what the forecast expenditures that are on the books for this budget session, 216, 217, when you look at those, what is referred to as the Eastern Division? That would be Glace Bay, that would be New Waterford, that would be Dominion. There is not a robust allocation. The proposed expenditures are elsewhere. They're not here. That's not balanced. To be clear, how would I do this? What would distinguish my way of proceeding? First of all, I am a realist and I understand we are a municipality with skinny resources. The total allocation this year, for example, for infrastructure is $30 million. That's what we're going to allocate. But that is insufficient for all our needs. But it is what it is. That's what we've got. And until such time as we have a more robust economy, we have to keep living within our means. My commitment in terms of that 30 million this year, for example, and every year forward, would be I would propose that we will spend half of that infrastructure allocation on roads. This year, what's allocated of that 30 million is 8.4. If I were mayor, it would be half of the 30, it would be 15. Why? I would do that for two reasons. Number one, roads employ an economic benefit in terms of the long-term result. And number two, there is a safety issue. That would be my priority. And I need to understand that half of our infrastructure budget, from if I am mayor, would be allocated to roads. Secondly, if I am mayor, in terms of how decisions would be made, this would be a process that would be based, when we look at roads, that would be done in terms of deciding what roads we deal with, what the priorities are. That would be done on the basis of engineering metrics. That's the way we would do that. It's the only way I know how to operate. The whole, any sense that politics was creeping into this, that would grate against my soul, okay? This has to be rational, this has to be fair, and this has to be based on an appropriate way forward. In respect to other infrastructure, buildings, transportation, etc., it seems to me that has to be based on the criteria we need to employ in terms of looking at those expenditure. Has to be, yes, of course, engineering metrics, but it has to be as well the service outcome and the economic benefit. And thirdly, my commitment to you would be that in terms of infrastructure spending, there has to be balance. People have to understand, we're a community that's going through a difficult time. But every part of this community has to understand that as we move forward, nobody's going to be left behind. Every community is in. It would be incredibly important that as these decisions are being made in terms of what we're going to spend money on, that it is an open and a transparent process in terms of how those decisions are being reached. So everybody, from one end of this municipality to the other, understands the basis of those decisions. We are rich. Having all of these communities comprise CBRM, this is not a burden. This is a gift. We are the richer. We are all the richer for our diversity. And every community has to understand that they are needed, that they are part of the grand total that constitutes this community. I think the other thing you need to know about me, in terms of the issue of infrastructure, is I know in this new world there's kind of a great, we like new buildings, we like building new buildings, and that's fine, and sometimes we do need to build new buildings. But at the same time, I think building new is not always necessary. Sometimes it is, but not always. And there's nothing quite like being able to appropriately refurbish an old building when it fits. New Dawn knows something about this. There was a woman by the name of Jane Jacobs who had something, she was part of the inspiration in terms of starting New Dawn, and she was a planner in Toronto who's passed now too. But Jane Jacobs had this wonderful phrase, which was, we need old buildings to help generate new ideas. And as we face the challenges and the opportunities that lay ahead, I think it's entirely appropriate that we take that refrain to heart as we find our way forward. My dear friends, we can and we must do better.